The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched so far that its ceiling disappeared into artificial clouds. Columns made of living crystal pulsed with soft blue light. The air smelled like ozone and flowers that no human had ever seen before. At the center of the room, a circular platform floated 3 meters above the polished floor. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood on that platform with her hands clasped behind her back. Next to her, Captain Marcus Rodriguez wore his dress uniform, the dark blue fabric crisp and clean. They both looked up at the 12 massive seats arranged in a semicircle around them. Each seat held a different alien species, and each one looked down at the two humans with expressions that ranged from curiosity to barely hidden contempt. The Luxari spoke first. Prime Luxar was a being made entirely of transparent crystal that reflected light in rainbow patterns. When it spoke, the sound came from vibrations in the air itself, translated into English by the small device in Sarah's ear. "Humans of Earth," the crystal being said, "you have been summoned before the Galactic Council to answer for your unauthorized entry into civilized space. Explain yourselves." Sarah smiled politely. She had practiced this smile for weeks. "Thank you for receiving us, honored council. We detected faster-than-light capable signatures in our region of space approximately 50 years ago. It took us this long to develop our own FTL drive and find you." A rippling sound moved through the council chamber. It took Sarah a moment to realize it was laughter. 50 years? A voice like grinding metal came from one of the seats. The Kresh representative was an insectoid creature, 3 meters tall with 4 arms and a body covered in dark red chitin. "We achieved FTL travel within 5 years of detecting other species. Your kind is slow." Captain Rodriguez tensed slightly, but Sarah touched his arm gently. They had expected this. "We are thorough," Sarah replied. Another council member leaned forward. This one appeared to be made of shifting purple energy contained in a vaguely humanoid shape. The photon representative's voice sounded like music. "Tell us, humans, what technological level has your species achieved?" "Do you have matter replication?" "No," Sarah admitted. "Quantum entanglement communication?" "We're working on it." "Molecular reconstruction healing?" "Our medicine is advancing, but no." "Energy-based shielding?" Sarah paused. "We have some experimental prototypes." The photon sat back, and Sarah could sense satisfaction in the movement. Another council member spoke up, this one a tall, thin creature with gray skin and enormous black eyes. The Mindari were telepaths, and Sarah felt an uncomfortable tickling at the edge of her thoughts as it spoke. "Your species still uses kinetic projectile weapons, correct? We have observed your transmissions." "Yes," Sarah said. "Firearms are common on Earth." "Primitive," the Mindari said flatly. "We abandoned such crude tools 10,000 cycles ago." Prime Luxar raised what might have been a hand, and the chamber fell silent. "Humans, the Council has discussed your situation. Your species has entered the galactic stage at a disadvantage. You are technologically behind by several categories. Your worlds are exposed and vulnerable. Your development path has been inefficient." Sarah said nothing. She simply waited. "However," the crystal being continued, "the Council is not without mercy. We offer you protectorate status. You will place your military assets under Council authority. You will accept Council observers on your worlds. You will halt all independent technological development and instead receive approved technology transfers from Council species. In return, you will receive our protection and guidance." The chamber went quiet. Sarah could hear Marcus breathing slowly beside her. This was the moment they had prepared for. "And if we refuse?" Sarah asked. "Then you will be declared a rogue species," Prime Luxar said simply. "Your ships will be barred from Council space. Your worlds will receive no protection. And should you become a threat to galactic order, appropriate measures will be taken." Sarah nodded slowly. "I understand. We need time to discuss this with our government." "You have 30 cycles," the Luxari said. "We will send coordinates for a Council outpost in your region. Deliver your answer there. If you fail to comply, we will assume you have chosen poorly." The platform began to descend. The audience was over. As Sarah and Marcus walked down the long corridor toward their ship, neither spoke. Both knew their conversation was likely being monitored. Only when they reached the airlock of the Indomitable did they relax slightly. The ship was not beautiful. Where the Council vessels looked like flowing works of art, the Indomitable was a blocky, angular craft covered in armor plating and sensor arrays. It had started its life as a warship before being hastily converted for this diplomatic mission. The conversion had been mostly cosmetic. In the captain's ready room, Marcus sealed the door and activated a white noise generator. Only then did he speak. They actually did it, he said. They threatened us. Sarah sat down heavily in a chair. They think we're primitives. Easy to intimidate. Are they wrong? Marcus asked. We saw their technology, Sarah. They teleported a council member across the chamber just to demonstrate they could. They showed us force fields that could stop a nuclear blast. They have ships that can cross the galaxy in days. What do we have? Metal tubes that throw metal slugs really fast? Yes, Sarah said quietly, but they don't understand what that means. She pulled out a datapad and began typing. I counted 12 different species in that chamber. Every single one of them looked at us like we were children playing with sticks. They have teleportation, so they never needed to perfect rocketry. They have energy shields, so they never needed better armor. They have replicators, so they never needed efficient manufacturing. And we have none of those things, Marcus said. Exactly. Sarah looked up, and there was something fierce in her eyes. We had to make everything the hard way. Every single advance cost us blood and sweat and decades of work. While they were playing with their teleporters, we were building factories. While they were perfecting their shields, we were calculating trajectories. While they were exploring the galaxy, we were fortifying our system. Marcus moved to the window and looked out at the massive council station. Hundreds of ships moved around it, appearing and disappearing as they used teleportation technology to jump from point to point. You think we can win a war against that? He asked. I think they've never fought a war at all, Sarah replied. Not a real one. Not against an enemy that doesn't play by their rules. She stood up and joined him at the window. Send a message to Earth Command. Full report. Include everything we saw, and tell them to prepare our friends. Our friends? Marcus looked confused. Sarah smiled, but this time there was no diplomacy in it. The railgun platforms, the missile batteries, the ship killers, everything we've been building for the last 50 years while they assumed we were just stumbling around in the dark. Marcus returned the smile. You think they'll actually attack us? I think they've been in charge for so long that they've forgotten what real resistance looks like. They'll send a fleet to intimidate us, something impressive but not overwhelming. She turned away from the window. And when they do, we're going to teach them a very old human lesson. What lesson is that? Never underestimate someone who learned to fight in the mud. The Indomitable's engines powered up, and the ship began its journey back to Earth. Behind them, the Council continued their deliberations. Confident in their power and their technology, they had dealt with hundreds of primitive species before. They had no reason to think humans would be any different. They were wrong. The Council intelligence chamber hummed with activity. Analysts from 6 different species worked at stations that looked more like art installations than computers. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing data streams and intercepted communications from Earth. Commander Thrak of the Kresh stood in the center of the room. His 4 arms crossed over his armored chest. His mandibles clicked together in thought as he studied the information scrolling past his compound eyes. Show me their military capabilities again, he ordered. A Mindari analyst gestured, and the display changed. Images of human weapons appeared in the air. Rifles, pistols, artillery, cannons, missiles, ships with obvious weapon ports along their hulls. They still use chemical propulsion for their projectiles, the analyst said, its gray face expressionless. Expanding gases push metal slugs down tubes. This is technology we abandoned 12,000 cycles ago. Their warships? Thrak asked. Primitive by our standards. No energy shields. No teleportation capability. Their armor is thick, but it's just layered metal and ceramic compounds. Their weapons are kinetic railguns and chemical rockets with explosive warheads. Thrak's mandibles clicked faster. Nuclear warheads? Yes, but those are ineffective against modern shielding. You know this, Commander. And their fleet size? The Mindari pulled up more data. We estimate approximately 200 military vessels of various classes. Most are small patrol craft. Perhaps 20 could be classified as capital ships. Nothing larger than 800 meters. 200 ships, Thrak repeated. He turned to face the Council observation deck, where several Council members watched the briefing through transparent walls. Honored Council, this species poses no significant military threat. They are exactly what they appear to be, primitives who stumbled into space through brute force rather than elegance. Prime Luxar's crystal form shimmered, yet they refused our offer. Pride, Thrak said. Young species often suffer from it. They need to be shown their place in the galactic order. I recommend a demonstration of force. Send a fleet to their home system. Not large enough to destroy them, but impressive enough to make them reconsider their position. And if they resist? A Photon Council member asked. Thrak's laugh sounded like rocks grinding together. With what? Their kinetic weapons? Honored Council. Our shields can stop energy beams that could vaporize a planet. A chunk of metal moving at even high velocity is nothing. It will bounce off or disintegrate on contact. The council members conferred among themselves in various languages. Finally, Prime Luxar spoke. Very well. Commander Thrak, you will take a battle group to the human home system. 50 ships. Demonstrate council power. If they resist, disable their vessels but avoid unnecessary casualties. We are not exterminators, Thrak bowed his head, as the council commands. 3 cycles later, Thrak's battle group dropped out of FTL at the edge of Earth's solar system. 50 warships appeared in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with energy shields that made them look like they were wrapped in liquid light. Thrak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Pride of Kresh. The command deck was efficient and clean, with workstations arranged in concentric circles. His officers worked quietly, monitoring systems that had been perfected over millennia. Report, Thrak ordered. We are at the system's edge, his sensor officer replied. Multiple planets. The third one from the star appears to be their homeworld, detecting numerous satellites and space stations in orbit. Any military response? Nothing yet. We are detecting communications traffic, but no ships are moving to intercept us. Thrak felt satisfaction wash over him. They were already frightened. Take us in, system. Standard approach. Let them see us coming. The fleet began moving forward, their drives leaving trails of blue light behind them. As they passed the orbits of the outer planets, Thrak noticed something odd. Sensor officer. Those outer planets have extensive infrastructure around them. Orbital stations, mining facilities. Far more than we detected from long-range scans. Confirmed, Commander. The planet they call Jupiter has dozens of facilities in orbit around it and its moons. Saturn as well. There are also numerous asteroids that appear to have been hollowed out and converted into habitats or industrial centers. Thrak frowned. The intelligence briefing had mentioned human expansion in their system, but this was far more extensive than expected. Still, none of it was military. Just civilians living in space. Nothing threatening. The fleet reached the inner system. Earth hung before them. A blue and white marble surrounded by a glittering ring of satellites and stations. It was beautiful in its own primitive way. Open a channel, Thrak commanded. All frequencies. A tone sounded indicating the channel was active. Thrak spoke clearly. Humans of Earth, this is Commander Thrak of the Galactic Council Enforcement Fleet. You have refused the Council's generous offer of protectorate status. This is unacceptable. You will now witness the power that protects the civilized galaxy. You will then reconsider your decision. Resistance is pointless. Cooperation is your only path forward. He waited for a response. Several seconds passed. Then a human voice came through the communication system, speaking calm and level. Commander Thrak, this is Admiral Chen of Earth Defense Command. You have entered sovereign territory without authorization. You are ordered to leave immediately. Thrak laughed. Or what, Admiral? Will you throw rocks at us? Last warning, Commander. Leave now, I think not. Thrak gestured to his helmsman. Take us into orbit around their homeworld. Show them. Alarms blared across the bridge. Commander, the sensor officer shouted. Multiple contacts. Energy signatures all around us. Weapons powering up. What? Thrak spun to face the tactical display. Red icons were appearing everywhere. Dozens of them. Hundreds. They had been there all along, hidden among the satellites and debris, their power systems running so low that sensors had dismissed them as inert objects. How many? Thrak demanded, still counting. At least 400 distinct weapons platforms and... Commander, I'm reading energy spikes from the planet's surface as well. Ground-based weapons. Thrak stared at the display. This was impossible. Activate shields. All ships combat formation. Prepare to... The humans fired first. The railgun platforms had been waiting in the dark, cold and patient. Each one was a simple design. A massive electromagnetic accelerator, a power supply, and a magazine filled with tungsten slugs the size of telephone poles. Nothing fancy, nothing elegant. Just physics and engineering refined to a brutal edge. They fired in sequence, creating a ripple of magnetic pulses across the battlefield. The tungsten rounds accelerated down the rails at 3% of light speed. No explosions, no energy beams, just metal moving very, very fast. The first rounds hit the crest shields and passed straight through them. The shields were designed to absorb and deflect energy. They could stop plasma bolts, particle beams, and even nuclear explosions, but they were nearly transparent to solid matter, especially matter moving at relativistic speeds. The tungsten slugs punched through the shields like they weren't there. The Pride of Crest shuddered as 3 rounds tore through its hull. The projectiles were moving so fast that they created superheated plasma in their wake. Secondary explosions ripped through the ship's interior as the rounds vented the ship's atmosphere and destroyed critical systems. Return fire. Thrak roared, clinging to his command chair as the deck tilted beneath him. His fleet tried. Energy weapons lanced out toward the railgun platforms, but the platforms had thick armor designed to handle heat and radiation. The beams scarred their hulls but didn't destroy them, and the platforms kept firing. Then the missiles arrived. They came from Earth itself, launched from ground bases and submarine platforms hidden in the oceans, hundreds of them, riding pillars of chemical fire into space. They were old technology, barely better than what humans had used in their first space age. But they didn't need to be advanced. They just needed to reach their targets. The missiles spread out, each one seeking a different crest ship. Point defense systems shot down many of them, but there were too many targets. And the missiles were cheap. Losing 10 to kill 1 ship was an acceptable trade ratio for humanity. Nuclear fire blossomed in the void. The crest shields absorbed most of the explosive force, but the missiles were just delivery systems. Inside each one was a payload of magnetically accelerated shrapnel, tiny pieces of metal moving at tremendous speeds. The shrapnel clouds passed through the shields and tore into the hulls like grapeshot. Thrak's bridge was in chaos. Warning lights flashed everywhere. His sensor officer was shouting damage reports. Ships in his fleet were going dark, their power systems failing, their hulls torn open. All ships retreat, Thrak ordered. Emergency teleport protocols. Several ships blinked out of existence, teleporting away to safety. But others couldn't. Their teleportation systems were damaged or destroyed. They were trapped in the kill zone, and the railguns kept firing with mechanical precision. The battle lasted 8 minutes. When it was over, 20 of Thrak's 50 ships were destroyed or crippled. The survivors limped away, teleporting to the edge of the system before jumping to FTL. On Earth, Admiral Chen watched the tactical display as the hostile contacts vanished. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in the Chamber's 3,000-year history. Every seat was filled. Every species was represented. The air crackled with tension and wounded pride. Prime Luxar stood at the center of the chamber, its crystal body pulsing with angry red light instead of its usual calm blue. The humans have committed an act of war against a Council peacekeeping force. 20 ships destroyed. 347 lives lost. This cannot stand. A photon representative flickered with agitation. But how did they do it? Commander Thrak assured us their weapons were primitive and ineffective. Thrak himself stood in a witness circle, his mandibles clicking in barely suppressed rage. Their weapons are primitive. That's what made this possible. Our shields are calibrated to stop energy weapons, not solid projectiles. Our sensors are designed to detect power signatures, not inert metal. We have spent millennia perfecting defenses against civilized warfare. The humans fight like barbarians. Effective barbarians, a Mindari observer noted dryly. The telepath had been quiet until now, but its black eyes reflected something close to concern. I have been reviewing the battle data. Their strategy was sophisticated despite their simple weapons. They hid their platforms among orbital debris. They timed their attack perfectly. They used numerical superiority and overlapping fields of fire. This was not luck, it was ambush, Thrak spat. Cowardice. It was victory, the Mindari replied, which makes it neither cowardly nor foolish. Another council member spoke up, this one a tall reptilian species called the Saurics. I have been studying human transmissions as ordered, their entertainment media, their historical records. I have concerning findings. Speak, Prime Luxar commanded. The Saurics manipulated a control surface and holographic images filled the chamber, scenes of human warfare across their history. Armies clashing with swords and spears, ships bombarding each other with cannons, tanks rolling across battlefields, aircraft dropping bombs, nuclear explosions lighting up the sky. This species has been in a state of nearly continuous warfare for their entire recorded history, the Sarek said quietly. 10,000 years of conflict, millions of battles, billions of casualties. They have fought over resources, territory, ideology, religion, and sometimes for no reason we can identify. They have developed hundreds of different fighting styles and strategies. They have written books, analyzing warfare the way we write books, analyzing art. The chamber fell silent as species after species absorbed this information. They have fought each other constantly, the Sareks continued. Nation against nation, faction against faction, sometimes family against family. The longest period of peace between major human factions lasted only 74 years. And during that peace, they still fought smaller conflicts. This is madness, a crystalline voice said. What species spends its entire existence at war? One that gets very good at it, the Mindari replied softly. Prime Luxar's light pulsed brighter. It does not matter. They are one species on a handful of worlds. We are 12 species with thousands of systems and millions of ships. War may be their specialty, but numbers are ours. We will assemble a proper fleet. 7 battle groups, 4,000 ships. We will end this quickly and decisively. Is that wise? The Mindari asked. Perhaps we should negotiate. No. Prime Luxar's voice was absolute. The Council's authority cannot be questioned. If we allow humans to defy us without consequence, others will follow. The peace we have maintained for 3 millennia will crumble. We will demonstrate to the humans and to the galaxy that Council rule is not optional. Thrak bowed his head. I volunteer to lead the assault. No, Prime Luxar said. You will remain here. Grand Admiral Kellex of the Soreks will command the fleet. She has military experience you lack. A massive reptilian figure stepped forward. Grand Admiral Kellex was 3 meters tall with scales the color of bronze. Her eyes were cold and calculating. I will not underestimate them as Thrak did. But neither will I fear them. 4,000 ships against 200. The outcome is certain. The Council voted. The result was 9 in favor of war, 3 abstaining. None voted against. The decision was made. On Earth, Admiral Chen received the Council's declaration of war through official channels. She read it twice, then set it aside and looked at the assembled officers in the command center. They're sending everything, she said quietly. 7 fleets, 4,000 ships. They'll be here in 6 days. The room was silent. No one spoke. The weight of those numbers hung in the air like a physical thing. Finally, General Park spoke up. We have 300 ships now. We've been building nonstop since the first contact. We have ammunition stockpiles that could fight for months. We have the home field advantage, but 4,000 ships. He trailed off. We also have something they don't, Chen replied. We know what they're thinking. They're thinking this is a police action. A show of force. They're thinking we'll see their numbers and surrender. They're not expecting a real fight. Can we win? Someone asked. Chen was quiet for a long moment. No, she said finally. Not if winning means driving them away permanently. They have too many resources, too many worlds. But we can make them bleed. We can make them hurt. We can make them understand that conquering Earth will cost more than it's worth. She stood and walked to the holographic display showing Earth and its surrounding space. They can teleport anywhere. That's their advantage. But it's also a pattern we can predict. They'll want to appear close to strategic targets. They'll want to mass their ships for intimidation. They think in terms of set-piece battles because that's all they've ever known. And we don't, Park said, understanding dawning. We don't, Chen agreed. We grew up with guerrilla warfare, asymmetric tactics, defense in depth. We know how to fight when we're outnumbered. Every human military in history has studied how to win against impossible odds. She smiled grimly. Time to put those lessons to use. The preparations took 6 days. Railgun platforms were repositioned. Missile batteries were restocked. Ship crews drilled constantly. And in the asteroid belt and the outer planets, construction continued. Factories that had been building civilian infrastructure switched to military production. Thousands of additional weapons platforms rolled off assembly lines. They were simple, crude, and deadly. The Council fleet arrived exactly when predicted. Grand Admiral Kellex brought her ships out of FTL in perfect formation, arrayed in a massive sphere around Earth. 4,000 vessels, shields glowing, weapons armed. It was the largest military force assembled in galactic history. On her flagship, Kellic studied the tactical display with satisfaction. Deploy sensor drones. I want to know the location of every human weapon. We will not be ambushed like Thrak. The drones spread out, tiny devices that could detect power signatures, metal concentrations, and movement. Within minutes, they had mapped hundreds of human defensive positions. Enemy weapons platforms identified, her sensor officer reported. Approximately 600 units. Also detecting 280 human warships forming a defensive line between us and their homeworld. 600 platforms, Kellic mused. They've been busy. It won't be enough. She opened a channel to the human fleet. Human forces. This is Grand Admiral Kellic of the Council Enforcement Fleet. You are outnumbered more than 10 to 1. Your defenses are mapped. Your platforms are targeted. Surrender now and no more lives will be lost. The response came from a human voice that sounded old and tired. This is Admiral Chen. We have heard your terms before. Our answer has not changed. Leave our system. Then you have chosen extinction, Kellic replied. She cut the channel and turned to her weapons officer. All ships open fire. Target the weapons platforms first. Sweep them from space. 4,000 ships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams capable of carving through mountains lanced across space toward the railgun platforms. The platform's armor glowed white-hot. Many exploded. Others went dark, their systems overloaded. In 30 seconds, the Council fleet destroyed 400 human weapons platforms. Kellic allowed herself a satisfied hiss. See? Their crude defenses cannot stand against concentrated fire. All ships advance. Destroy the human fleet, then establish orbital control. The fleet began moving forward in perfect formation. The remaining human platforms opened fire, but their railgun rounds were intercepted by point defense systems or absorbed by shields. A few ships took damage, but nothing critical. The human warships engaged, firing missiles and railguns in desperate volleys. Council ships returned fire. Explosions lit up the void. One by one, human ships went dark. They're breaking, Kellic's tactical officer reported. Human ships are retreating toward their inner planets. Pursue them, Kellic ordered. We end this now. The Council fleet surged forward and Kellic felt the satisfaction of impending victory. The humans had fought bravely, but bravery meant nothing against overwhelming force. Then her sensor officer made a confused sound. Admiral, I'm detecting new contacts. Thousands of them. They're everywhere. What? Kellic stared at the tactical display as it filled with red icons. They appeared in clusters throughout the solar system. Around Jupiter. Around Saturn. In the asteroid belt. Even in the orbital paths of the inner planets. The Battle of Jupiter's moons would be remembered as the turning point. Grand Admiral Kellic watched in horror as her perfectly organized fleet descended into chaos. The missiles kept coming, wave after wave of crude chemical rockets, each one carrying death in the form of nuclear-pumped shrapnel. Her ship's point defense systems were designed for precision targeting, not overwhelming saturation attacks. They shot down hundreds of missiles, but thousands more got through. Fleet cohesion is breaking down, her tactical officer reported, struggling to keep calm. Ships are teleporting to avoid missile impacts. We've lost formation. That was the problem with teleportation, Kellic realized too late. It was an escape, not a tactic. Her ships could jump away from danger, but they couldn't coordinate while doing it. Each captain was making independent decisions, teleporting to what they thought was safety. Reformulate around the flagship, Kellic ordered. All ships converge on my position. We maintain formation and push through. Some ships obeyed. Others continued their random jumps. And the human warships exploited every moment of confusion. The human vessels weren't fleeing anymore. They were hunting. Small groups of 3 or 4 ships would target isolated council vessels, pour railgun fire and missiles into them until shields collapsed, then move to the next target. They didn't try to fight fair. They ambushed, flanked, and retreated when faced with superior numbers. This is not how space battles are conducted. Kellic's second-in-command hissed in frustration. Where is their honor? Their formation discipline? They don't care about honor, the Mindari liaison said quietly. The telepath's voice carried a strange note of respect. They care about winning. There is a difference, a proximity alarm blared. One of the missile swarms was heading directly for Kellic's flagship. She gripped her command throne as the point defense opened fire. Bright tracers filled the void. Explosions blossomed like deadly flowers. Most of the missiles died. 7 got through. The first nuclear explosion was distant enough that the shields absorbed it easily. The second and third were closer, and the flagship shuddered. The fourth and fifth detonated almost simultaneously, and suddenly alarms were screaming across the bridge. "Shields at 40%, someone shouted. "Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Shrapnel penetration." Kellex felt her ship groan around her. "Damage control teams, seal those breaches. Redirect power to shields." She pulled up the tactical display and felt her blood run cold. Her fleet of 4,000 ships had been reduced to 3,200 in less than an hour. Not all were destroyed. Many were damaged and had retreated, but the losses were catastrophic. And the humans showed no signs of stopping. "Orders, Admiral?" her tactical officer asked. Kellex made a decision that went against every instinct. "Signal the fleet. Tactical withdrawal to Jupiter orbit. We regroup there outside the main missile field." The Council ships teleported away from Earth, appearing in formation near Jupiter. The massive gas giant loomed beside them, its swirling clouds oddly peaceful compared to the battle they'd just left. "Count survivors," Kellex ordered. The numbers came back slowly. 3,200 ships had made it to the rally point. She'd lost 800 vessels in one engagement. 800 ships. The Council hadn't lost 800 ships in the last 500 years of peacekeeping operations combined. "At least we're clear of their prepared defenses," her second said. "We can repair, reorganize, and plan a better assault." "Admiral," the sensor officer's voice was small and frightened. "New contacts. All around Jupiter and its moons." Kellex looked at the display and felt something she hadn't experienced in her 20 years of military service. Fear. The moons of Jupiter were covered in installations, not civilian ones, military ones. Railgun platforms bigger than anything they'd seen near Earth. They'd been hidden, powered down, invisible to the Council's sensors. "Until now, how many?" Kellex whispered, still counting. "At least 300 major installations, plus smaller platforms. Admiral, Jupiter alone has more defensive weapons than Earth did." "That's impossible. They couldn't have built all this in 6 days." The Mindari liaison spoke up again, its black eyes reflecting the tactical display. "They didn't. Humans have been expanding through their solar system for over 200 years. While we watched Earth and dismissed them as primitives, they were building factories and shipyards on every rock large enough to support them. We never looked beyond their homeworld. We assumed they were trapped there. We were wrong. A railgun platform on Io, one of Jupiter's inner moons, fired first. The tungsten slug crossed the distance in seconds and punched through a Sorix destroyer's shields like they were paper. The ship broke apart in silence. Then all 300 installations opened fire. The next 72 hours became known among the survivors as the Jupiter Gauntlet. The Council fleet couldn't retreat without looking weak, but they couldn't advance either. They were trapped in the orbit of a gas giant, surrounded by hidden weapons that fired with mechanical precision. Kellex ordered her ships to return fire, but the platforms were protected by thick armor and were dug into the surfaces of Jupiter's moons. Energy weapons scarred their hulls but rarely destroyed them, and they kept firing. Railgun rounds came from every direction from multiple moons, creating a sphere of death that was almost impossible to escape. "We need to teleport out," her second-in-command urged. "Retreat to deep space beyond their range." "No," Kellex growled. "The Council ordered us to pacify this system. We don't retreat. Then we die here." Kellex had no response to that. On Ganymede, the largest of Jupiter's moons, a human weapons coordinator named Lieutenant Chen watched the battle through sensor feeds. She'd been stationed here for 3 years, one of thousands of soldiers manning the outer system defenses. The work had been boring until 6 days ago. Now she watched as railgun platform after railgun platform fired in sequence, their barrels glowing white-hot from continuous use. Cooling systems pumped liquid hydrogen through the weapons, fighting to keep them operational. Some platforms had already burned out, their barrels warped from the heat, but there were always more. "Ammunition status?" she asked. "Platform Ganymede 7 is down to 30%. Ganymede 12 just went offline, barrel failure. Ganymede 3 is still firing but reports power system issues. Rotate firing patterns. Give the hot platforms time to cool. Priority targets are their capital ships." "Understood." Chen zoomed out on her tactical display. The Council fleet was trying to maintain formation, but they were taking steady losses. A ship every few minutes. They were bleeding, slowly but surely. Her communication console blinked. "Lieutenant Chen, this is Admiral Chen on Earth. Status?" Chen smiled. The Admiral was her grandmother. "Still firing, Admiral. Enemy fleet is down to approximately 2,800 ships. They're not advancing, but they're not retreating either." "Good. Hold your positions. The longer we keep them at Jupiter, the more time we have to prepare secondary defenses. Europa and Callisto are to begin firing in rotation. Conserve ammunition where possible." "Understood. Grandmother, are we going to win this?" There was a pause. "We're going to make them wish they'd never come here." That's enough. The battle continued. Hours blurred together. Railguns fired, cooled, and fired again. Ships died. Platforms burned out. The void around Jupiter filled with debris and frozen atmosphere vented from dying ships. On the third day, something changed. The photon contingent of the Council fleet, approximately 300 ships, suddenly jumped away. They didn't retreat to a new position within the system. They left entirely, jumping to FTL and disappearing. "What just happened?" Kellex demanded. The Mindari liaison checked its communication systems. "The Photon Council representative has withdrawn their forces from the conflict. They are citing excessive casualties for insufficient gain. They're abandoning the Council? They're abandoning this war." Kellex stared at the tactical display. Her fleet was now down to 2,500 ships. She'd lost more than a third of her force. And now one of the Council species was refusing to fight. "Admiral," her communications officer said hesitantly, "we're receiving similar signals from the Luxari and Mindari contingents. They're questioning the continuation of the offensive. The unity of the Council was cracking." On Earth, Admiral Chen received the reports with grim satisfaction. "They're starting to doubt. Keep up the pressure. I want a tax on any Council ship that enters the inner system. Make every kilometer cost them." The human strategy was working. They couldn't destroy the Council fleet, but they could make victory impossibly expensive. Every dead Council soldier was a citizen of a species that had known peace for millennia. Every destroyed ship represented resources and lives that the Council wasn't used to losing. Humans were used to loss. They'd been losing soldiers in wars for thousands of years. It was tragic, horrible, but familiar. The Council species had forgotten what war really cost. In the Council chambers back at the Council homeworld, the unity that had lasted 3,000 years was shattering. Species representatives argued with increasing hostility. "We've lost over 1,500 ships," a photon representative said, its energy form flickering with agitation. 1,500 for what? To punish one species for having pride? The Council chamber had never been so quiet. 12 species sat in their elevated seats, but there was no unity anymore. Prime Luxar's crystal body was dim, its light flickering uncertainly. The reports from the Jupiter battle had shaken everyone. 2,300 ships remained combat effective. Grand Admiral Kellex reported via holographic transmission. Her bronze scales looked dull, her eyes tired. "We have withdrawn to the outer system. The humans are not pursuing, but their defensive networks are far more extensive than we believed possible. Recommend immediate assault on their homeworld," a Kresh representative growled. "We still outnumber them. We can win through overwhelming force. At what cost?" a photon representative asked softly. "We've already lost 1,700 ships and nearly 5,000 crew members. How many more deaths before you consider the price too high? The price is irrelevant. Council authority must be maintained. To what end?" A Luxari representative joined the photon's argument. "We demanded human submission to maintain galactic order. But our war has killed more beings in 2 weeks than the last 500 years of peacekeeping combined. Where is the order in that?" Prime Luxar tried to restore calm. "The Council speaks with one voice. We cannot show division. We already are divided," the Mindari representative said quietly. The telepath's black eyes surveyed the chamber. 3 species have withdrawn their forces. 4 more are questioning the war's purpose. Only 5 species still fully support continuing the offensive. This is not unity. This is collapse. Before Prime Luxar could respond, a new signal came through. Admiral Chen from Earth was requesting to address the Council. "She dares?" a Kresh representative hissed. "After killing thousands of Council citizens?" "Let her speak," the Mindari said. "Perhaps we should hear what she has to say." The holographic display changed and Admiral Chen appeared. She wore her uniform, her gray hair pulled back, her face showing the exhaustion of someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. Behind her, the Earth hung in space, blue and white and defiant. "Honored Council," Chen began, and her voice carried no mockery despite the formal greeting. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of Earth Defense Command. I have a message for you." "You are in no position to make demands," Prime Luxar said coldly. "I'm not making demands. I'm offering terms." Chen's eyes swept across the council members. "You came to our system with 4,000 ships. You expected us to surrender. We didn't. You expected us to be easy to defeat. We weren't. You've now lost nearly half your fleet, and you're learning what every human child knows from studying history. Wars are easier to start than to finish." "You cannot win," a Sarx representative said. "We can call more ships, more fleets. We have thousands of worlds. You have one system." "True," Chen acknowledged. "You can eventually overwhelm us through sheer numbers. But let me tell you what that will cost. Every ship you send into our system will face the same defenses that destroyed your first fleet. We have ammunition stockpiles that can fight for years. We have factories that are building more weapons platforms every day. We have a population that has been preparing for this fight for 50 years. She leaned forward. "More importantly, we know how to take casualties and keep fighting. We've been doing it for our entire history."
"Can you say the same?"
"How many more dead soldiers will your people accept before they start asking why you're fighting? How many more species will withdraw from the council before your alliance falls apart?" The chamber was silent. Chen's words struck at the heart of the council's weakness. They were used to easy victories and willing subjects. Prolonged, bloody warfare was alien to them in more ways than one. "We could destroy your world," Prime Luxar said, but the threat sounded hollow. "You could try," Chen agreed, "but we've evacuated the majority of our population to orbital habitats and outer system colonies. You could glass Earth and we'd still be here, still fighting, and then you'd be the species that committed genocide. Is that the legacy the council wants?" A photon representative spoke up. "What are your terms, Admiral?" Chen took a breath. "Simple. Mutual non-aggression. We don't attack you. You don't attack us. We agree to respect council space and not interfere with your territories. In return, you acknowledge our sovereignty and leave our system." "That's all?" the photon asked, surprised. "That's all? We never wanted to conquer the galaxy. We just wanted to explore it on our own terms. You demanded submission. We refused. This war happened because you couldn't accept that a species might choose independence over protection." Prime Luxar's crystal form pulsed with angry colors. "This is unacceptable. The council does not negotiate with who?" Chen interrupted. "With species that fight back? With people who won't bow. Maybe that's your problem." The Mindari representative raised a hand. "Admiral Chen, your species has proven to be resilient and capable. But help me understand something. You said you've been preparing for this fight for 50 years. You knew we existed for that long and immediately began preparing for war. Why?" Chen's expression softened slightly. "Because it's what we do. When humans discovered we weren't alone in the universe, we hoped for friendship. But we prepared for war. It's not paranoia. It's experience. Every time in our history that a more advanced civilization met a less advanced one, the less advanced one suffered. We weren't going to let that happen to us." "So you assumed we would be hostile," the Mindari said. "We assumed you might be," Chen corrected, "and we were right to prepare. You came to our world with an ultimatum. Submit or face consequences. That's not a greeting. That's a threat. We responded to your threat with force because we've learned that bullies only respect strength." Another species representative spoke up, one that had been silent until now. The Velix were a small, furry species known for their diplomatic skills. "Admiral Chen, what you say has merit. But understand our perspective. The Council has maintained peace among dozens of species for 3,000 years. That peace is built on the understanding that conflicts are resolved through Council arbitration, not violence. When you refused our offer and destroyed our ships, you threatened the foundation of galactic civilization. Did we?" Chen asked. "Or did we expose a flaw that was always there? Your peace is maintained through implied force. Species join the Council because they fear being left out, or because they know they can't resist. That's not peace. That's intimidation. Real peace requires mutual respect, not submission." The chamber erupted in argument. Species representatives shouted at each other in a dozen different languages. The unity of the Council was breaking down in real time. Prime Luxar tried to restore order, but its voice was lost in the chaos. Finally, the Mindari representative projected a telepathic pulse that got everyone's attention. "Enough," the Mindari said firmly. "We are proving the humans' point. We are divided. Our fleet is battered. Our authority is questioned. We have two choices: continue a war that we may win but at catastrophic cost, or accept that perhaps the galaxy is large enough for species who choose independence. You would surrender to these primitives? A Kresh representative demanded. I would acknowledge reality, the Mindari replied. The humans are not primitives. They are different. They developed along a different path than we did. Their path made them better at warfare. Our path made us better at peace. Neither path is superior. They are simply different. The Velix representative spoke again. I propose a vote. Do we continue the war or do we accept the human terms? The vote was close. 5 species voted to continue. 7 voted to accept terms. The war was over. 3 weeks later, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the council chamber again. This time, Captain Rodriguez was not with her. Instead, she was accompanied by a full diplomatic team, scientists, engineers, and military advisors. The council had changed. Prime Luxar was no longer the sole voice of authority. The chamber had been reorganized to give each species equal speaking rights. The council had been restructured into something new. The Galactic Assembly. Ambassador Chen, the Mindari representative, said. It had become the de facto coordinator of the new assembly. Your terms have been accepted. Human sovereignty is recognized. Your territory is acknowledged. In return, you have agreed to respect assembly space and participate in diplomatic forums. We have, Chen confirmed. But there is something else we wish to discuss. Your technology. Your approach to problem solving. It is different from ours in ways that might benefit the entire galaxy. Chen raised an eyebrow. You want to trade technology? We want to learn from each other, the Mindari corrected. For 3,000 years, the Council advanced along the same paths. We discovered shortcuts, advanced technologies that made our lives easier, but we abandoned the fundamentals. We forgot that simple solutions can be more effective than complex ones. A Luxari representative joined in. You mastered kinetic weapons, projectile physics, material science, manufacturing efficiency. These are things we abandoned millennia ago. Meanwhile, we mastered energy manipulation, teleportation, and molecular reconstruction. Perhaps together we can create something better than either could alone. Chen considered this. You want human engineers working with council scientists? Assembly scientists now, the Mindari corrected gently. Yes, collaboration, not conquest. Chen smiled. That's something we can work with.